You need the masses. There is no form of government or political authority, including even in monarchy or dictatorship, that can flourish without the masses. So there must be a problem that you are attempting to solve at the collective level, may not be at the personal level, at the collective level. And there must be something that they see in you that will cause them to give you that following. Because many times, good governance advocates are not invested in their communities. They are doing their private businesses quite alright. They are attending conferences quite alright, but they don't deliberately act in ways that will connect them with the masses. You only come back home 6 months to the election. Sometimes they only need you to speak up that the government is oppressing them, because I see some opposition leaders, the way they do the opposition is 1 year to the election. 3 years in, no comment. By you just saying the poor masses, the poor is getting poorer, the rich, you have gotten their attention. Jesus will say, I was naked, you did not clothe me. I was in prison, you did not visit me. Sometimes the masses, although they are suffering, they just want few leading voices to identify with that suffering, and they will give you their support. But that identification must be loud, it must be clear, it must be consistent, and it must be ahead of when you will need them to show up for you at the ballot. Good evening, everyone. Today is the third offering of the class Kingsmen Part 3, the 4 kinds of human resources every political leader must have before ascending the throne. You would recall that in the first class we're studying David, by the way, and the 4 kinds of men David had in his arsenal that helped him to take the territory, to take the kingship, and also to retain the political power. We talked about transformed social rejects. We also talked about skilled men in the last class. And then today, which is the third part of the class, we are discussing the masses. And then by Sunday, we'll be discussing the 4th component, and then we close out this series. You need the masses. There is no form of government or political authority, including even in monarchy or dictatorship, that can flourish without the masses. 1 Chronicles chapter 11 verse 2. Now these were the heads of the mighty men whom David heard, who strengthened themselves with him in his kingdom, with all Israel, to make him king according to the word of the Lord concerning Israel. So you already know that David had mighty men. But these mighty men strengthened themselves with him in his kingdom. But they didn't do that alone. They did it with what? With all Israel, which is talking about the masses, to make him king according to the word of the Lord concerning Israel. 1 Chronicles chapter 12 verse 38. All these men of war who could keep ranks, and we talked about these men, very skilled men, nobles, who could keep ranks, they came to Hebron with a loyal heart. Why did they come to Hebron? To make David king over all Israel. But they didn't come alone, and all the rest of Israel were of one mind to make David king. You see, without the people, any political authority, even in brutal dictatorships, cannot flourish. So we know you now have skilled men on your side. You have transformed men on your side, but you need popular support. That's the third component. The first component are the social rejects who David transformed, the skilled men who joined him at some point in his campaign, but now the masses eventually joined, and finally other kings joined him to strengthen his kingdom. Without the masses, even dictatorships fall anytime the people are willing and able to clearly demonstrate their lack of confidence in the government. So popular support is important if one is to acquire and retain political power. Remember that in the previous class we discussed that there are 2 components of power, acquiring it and retaining it, that you can acquire, but if you don't sustain it, you will not have it. That people can acquire power today and it will slip out of their hands. So you need popular support. It's an important component. Out of the 4, it is one that you need to be able to acquire and also retain. But you see, the thing with popular movements is, as important as they are, the masses alone cannot deliver or sustain political power in isolation. That one must combine popular support with all the other distributed sources of political power. It's important that you have popular support, and we will discuss the importance and we will discuss the techniques. But they are not enough. So I think we want to start by saying that although this is good, but on its own, it is largely insufficient. Because you must have mighty men and then the masses. You see it here now. These were the mighty men of war. But the mighty men of war on their own cannot make David king. They have to join with the rest of Israel. You saw it also in First Chronicles. Now, I'm going to also bring up scriptures, other scriptures to support this. So anywhere you see the masses successfully pull off an incredible political power move, there are very powerful people who assisted. Now, depending on the scenario, these powerful entities may present themselves, may show their hands. Other times they may be behind the scenes, but they are there. Without them, the masses may generate buzz, they might generate talking points, but they can't successfully seize or lay hold on power. This point is central to our conversation. You need those skilled men, those nobles. You need them. But then you need popular support. You need it. But after you have gotten the popular support, you find out that there are people who often get tempted to build on only one plank. They build their kingship, and by kingship now we can refer to democracy, whether that be executive governor, whether that be president, whether that be local government chairman. There are people who want to build on one plank. They are always wooing the masses, and there is nothing wrong with that. But then without the mighty men, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for them to get to office. And there are people who build on just mighty men and they ignore the masses. The masses don't like them, but they force themselves on the masses. And that kind of equation cannot last for very long. Either the masses are docile or that the government becomes repressive. So they are ruling with the support of just one leg. So now let's analyze, because remember that in the first class, or at least in the introduction to the first part of this 4-part series, we did say that after the 4 series, you will find out and may begin to appreciate what happened in 2023. So if you look at 3, we're just highlighting 3, because we said that the masses can generate buzz. But if they don't equip, or if the political leader, or if the aspiring political leader don't add to the mass support, the support of other distributed power sources, then that aspiration may suffer. So you now ask yourself, who were the major constituents of Abiola's support base? Why was he able to mobilize the whole of Nigeria? A significant proportion of the masses, but the political elite of the time. What of Nnamdi Azikiwe? What of Nnamdi Kanu? Because you see, Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, has mass support. Now, not to denigrate anybody or any profession, but you see that majorly, many of his supporters are the artisans, people at the, he might have a little bit of middle class supporters, they are there, but majority of them who live in Nigeria, in the southern part of the Nigeria, or from the southeastern part of the Nigeria, they are majorly in the middle to low income earners. And if you call for a rally, they can fill a stadium. And you should be able to fill stadiums. but there are some places they can't get to. If you also look at 2023 and you look at the campaign of P2B, you also see that he did an incredible job in mobilizing popular support. Now, you don't need 100% of the political elites. You don't. But to assume that you don't need them is a very dangerous assumption. Between 7 to 13% of them will do the magic. But many times, people who use popular support as a vehicle to get into power often tend to do that, thinking that there is no need for other mighty men or nobles. That's not the case with David. The nobles came together and joined hands with the masses to make him king according to the word of the Lord. If you have only nobles on your side, which is the Tinubu kind of presidency, you're just foisting yourself on the people. But you can successfully do that because, in fact, in 9 out of 10 cases, mighty men alone can connive without the popular support to make one king. You see it in Nigeria, you see it all over Africa. For this to successfully happen, you either need a docile or a timid population or a brutally suppressive regime. Because those nobles, although the people don't want what they are, but they can just bulldoze their way in. And nothing will happen in their own world. God's model is a model of partnership between both realms. You need the political elite, or at least the elite of the society. Not all of them, because sometimes it seems as if the elite and the masses have competing interests. But anybody who aspires to govern, although you don't want to pander to the political elite or to this thing, you also don't want to ignore them completely. So it's a delicate balance that your policies, your posturing, your offering must find something in it that will attract the masses, that will appeal to the masses. But in that mass appeal, you don't go to the extent of pushing out all the other strong men, because you need strong men to take the city. Remember that we say that you alone can kill the lion. You alone can kill the bear. You alone can kill Goliath. But if you are going to take the city or to become king, then you need support. And one of that support is the support of the masses. But we have seen that the major flaw of people who tend to build popular movement is to pander to the people alone, saying, I don't want to do business with the nobles. And this sometimes comes out of false sense of purity, that I alone am the only sane political elite. The others are insane. No. Will you get to the point that we can't recognize your policies again? No. But either you create a new set of elites, because there are some elites in the society, they have power. They have the financial power. They have the influence. They may not be politically active. They may not be interested. But you have to get them interested. Now, the ones that are interested, maybe they are on the negative spectrum of things. No wahala. But instead of having nothing, you must have to create your own elite. You must have to have strong men whose words can mean a lot. Men whose one phone call can mean a lot. Men whose presence can stop some things. I get reminded of that. It's not proper English, but I think we now know what it connotes. That all fingers are equal, but some are more equal than the others. Look, there are places popular support can get you to. There are some rooms they can't enter. They can make noise on the street, they can dance, and I'm not denigrating that. You need that. As you will soon see that without them, what you are going to have is a dictatorship. Without popular support, if you are ever getting there, you are going to be repressive because the people don't want you, they resent you. And in some cases, that resentment, they may put some form of organization into it to demonstrate that resentment. So you need the masses. But just know that if you can't, because the other political elite, the other elites, not just political elite now, because we're not just talking about political elite. We're talking about all the elites in the society, because no society can be better than the collective consciousness of its elites. It is the elite of any society that determines the way the society goes. They model for the society. They decide for the society. Now, you may have a lot of elites who don't use the powers they have. Now, the work of this aspiring leader is, since the other percentage of the elites have decided on what to do, and once you go in bed with them, you've lost the masses, then you leave them alone. But those elites that are not interested, that are interested in just running their mega businesses, coming back home to the village every once in a while, and then quietly living a life of, I think they call it quiet desperation. We must find ways to ignite them. Saying that you don't need those people is against the run of play. You need mighty men and you need the masses. The masses are easy to manipulate. They are emotive. Strong men are majorly rational. The masses are majorly emotive. You will see it very soon. They don't have a mind of their own. As you will soon see, there is nothing like public opinion. All public opinion is the consent or manufactured consent of a few. Let's go to the scriptures. Acts chapter 19, verse 19 to 31. Also, many of those who had practiced magic brought their books together and burned them in the sight of all. So this was Paul's ministry. Paul had gone into a hedonistic territory where they worship Diana, a god, a goddess, or a god. And then when he preached his gospel and demonstrated it with power, with very persuasive arguments and proofs to back it up, many people began to burn their magic books, began to throw away their gods. And they counted the value of them, and it totaled 50,000 pieces of silver. So the word of the Lord grew mightily and prevailed in that region. When these things were accomplished, Paul purposed in the Spirit, when he had passed through Macedonia and Achaia, to go to Jerusalem, saying, after I had been there, I must also see Rome. So he went into Macedonia, two of those who ministered to him, Timothy and Erastus. But he himself, he sent two of his advanced team protocol into Jerusalem, but then he himself stayed in Asia for some time. And about that time, there arose a great commotion about the way. The way is now his new sect, his new religion, his new way of life. For a certain man named Demetrius, now underline a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith who made silver shrines of Diana, brought no small profit to the craftsman. So there is this Diana that everybody has to buy and keep in their houses, buy and keep in their shrines. So there are silversmiths, and this made them multimillionaires. It brought no small profits to the craftsmen. So he called the craftsmen together with the workers of similar occupation and said, men, you know that we have our prosperity by this trade. Moreover, you see and hear that not only at Ephesus, but throughout almost Asia, that this Paul has persuaded and turned away many people, saying that they are not gods which were made with hands. So not only is this trade of ours in danger of falling into disrepute, but also the temple of the great goddess Diana may be despised. her magnificence destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worship. Pay attention. Now, when they heard this, they were full of wrath and cried out and said, Great is Diana of Ephesians. So the whole city was filled with confusion and rushed into the theater with one accord, having seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians, Paul's traveled companions. So you see what is happening here. This new gospel is threatening to put some people out of business. Like every political aspiration, once you are presenting something new, there are people it will threaten. You're trying to clean up the budget to say that there must be zero-based budgeting. There are people it will take out of business. You're talking about contracting, public contracting, awarding contracts according to public needs. There are contract racketeers it will take out of business. And although this man invoked the name of their goddess Diana, the real motive is when he said, we make a living out of this thing. I don't care whether these people worship God or not. I don't care whether they follow Paul or not. But their following of Paul is affecting our bottom line. What did they do? They stirred up the whole city. It's just that they just caused NSAS 3.0. Or they just stirred up a rebellion and the whole city went up in flames. How many people? One man and a few of his people stirred up the whole city. Evidence number one. Now they masked an economic agenda, a personal agenda. They painted it with the broad tar of religion. This is still playing in Nigeria till today. That many people mask their personal interests and they paint Allah on it. They paint God on it. They paint but he's a Catholic on it. They paint but he's a Pentecostal on it. They paint but he's from our own on it. There is a personal interest. But then how can you tell the people that you're going to be put out of business? You can tell that to a select few. That was not the message they passed to the masses who protested. The message for the cartel was different. But what they presented to the masses is great Diana is about to be brought into disrepute and everybody up in arms. Very few men instigating the rest. Let's stay on the book of Acts. Now, Paul again has done his wonders in another place. But some Jews were not persuaded. All right? Because he had gone to a city. So if you read Acts chapter 1, it's chapter 17, verse 1 to 7 or 5, you will know where he preached and what his message brought about. But there are people who were not persuaded. They became envious and took some evil men from the marketplace and gathering a mob, they all set the city in an uproar. A few men were not persuaded. I underlined it for you. They took some evil men. They gathered a mob. What did they do? They set the whole city in an uproar. Masses, their consent is easy to manufacture. And see what they did. They attacked the house of Jason and sought to bring them. So they attacked the hotel where they were staying. Of course, not a hotel, it's the house of Jason. So how they do it is that they are traveling and they stay in the house of a brother. So the mob went to attack and sought to enter into the place where they were supposed to stay. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some brothers to the rulers of the city, crying, "These men who have turned the world upside down have come here too. Jason has harbored them, and these are acting contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying there is another king, Jesus." And they troubled the crowd and the rulers of the city when they had these things. Of course, if you read this whole scripture, which we will not read, you will find out that they were lying. They were lying. But they were saying something that can stir. You see, verse 8, and they troubled the crowd. Because the masses are emotive. There are some people who know how to touch those various touch points of mass appeal. Now Paul left this same place and went to another place. In that same Acts chapter 17, verse 13, he left the place for them because this happened in Thessalonica. But he now traveled down to Berea to preach. And he was achieving success. Guess what? They heard that he was achieving success in Berea. They left Thessalonica. So when the Jews from Thessalonica learned that the word of God was preached by Paul at Berea, they came there also and did what? Stirred the crowd. They have the formula. Mark chapter 15. Just using 2 or 3 scriptures to prove a point, and then we'll move to the next one. But Pilate answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?" For he knew that the chief priest has handed him over to them because of envy. No, for he knew that the chief priest had handed him over because of envy. Are you seeing this again? This same envy that caused them to hand over Jesus was the same envy that caused the Jews to attack Paul. Anyways, today is not the day for that, but I just want you to know that also political consequences, issues can come out of envy. For he knew that the chief priest had handed him over because of envy. But the chief priest stirred up the crowd. It was not the crowd that said, "Release Barabbas, rather." It was not their decision. It was a manufactured consent. So when you see them shouting, kill him, crucify him," it was something the chief priests were inside the crowds, stirring up the crowd. And Pilate asked them, "What then do you want me to do with him who you call the king of the Jews?" They cried out again, "Crucify him." But this crucify him is a crucify him that came from a social engineering. How do I know? Because in Mark chapter 11, 14, 15, 11, 12, 13, you saw it was this same crowd. Because this is happening just within the same week of the triumphant entry. This was the same crowd that were spreading their wrapper on the ground when he was entering Jerusalem. By the time the chief priests did their work, men are fickle and easy to manipulate. And anybody who wants to build a popular movement must understand this. I'll give you 2 examples with Nigerian Twitter space. Some of you may know the former SGF, Babachiri Lawal, and some of you may know of his grass cutting scandal. I think there was a contract racketeering. I think the story was that he awarded contract of grass cutting, and eventually they traced back some of those monies into his account that came back in tranches of 10 million each. And he was dismissed from the government and his reputation in the mud. You need to see what Nigerian Twitterati did to him. Few years down the line, he just wrote one article. Or is it an interview he's granted? Criticizing Muslim tickets. By then, he has not even said he will support P2B. Immediately, he wrote one article from a grass-cutting Lawal. He became the darling of Nigeria's Twitter space. He became the darling of Nigeria's Twitterati. Once you say what they want to hear. Another person is Senator Elisha Abo. Some of you will remember him of the sex toy shop scandal. If there was an infamous or if there was a despised senator on the Twitter space, then it would be this Senator Elisha. Few months after, he wrote an article. This one I remember, he wrote an article. Though he granted a newspaper interview opposing Tinubu Shetima's Muslim tickets. The same very guys on Twitter began to adore him. He became their hero. The masses are fickle. Once you can paint a personalized word picture, the masses will follow. You see, what Jesus did with triumphant entry is that it's a culture, it's a Reuben culture, that anytime they go out for conquest, anytime they go out for battle, and they are victorious, as they are coming back, they have this parade, this horse ride or donkey ride. They have triumphant entry into the city. So now, when they are traveling from where they conquered, they will be marching like ordinary soldiers. But once they get to the entrance of the city, they will now dress up in regal attire, in their war formation. And they will start doing military parade, entering the city. Sometimes it was barbaric then, of course, you know. The head of the king they defeated on a platter, they'll be dragging him, and then sometimes the spoils of war, including the slaves they acquired, they'll be dragging them. So as they are coming in, the women and the children who didn't go out, and the weak men or the infirmed who did not go out to the battle will now come out in the streets to praise these victorious warriors. How do I paint this picture? It's just as if Nigeria won a World Cup, for instance. And maybe World Cup was in Brazil or in any other country. And Nigerian delegation went there and came back with a World Cup. And then as they are crossing through the streets of Abuja, displaying the trophy, whatever it is the masses will do to them is what the masses in Rome do to people, soldiers, when they come back victorious from a conquest. And so when Jesus painted that word picture, the same victorious parade, they gave him the same kind of treatment. This is also God's strategy because God used it in the case of Jonah. Many people know about the dramatic repentance of Ninevites. Of course, Jonah was a good evangelist. That was why God insisted it must be him. But something interesting happened that caused the whole city to repent in under 24 hours. Rather, 48. Nineveh worshipped a fish god. They worship a fish god, actually a fish goddess. So I won't tell you about all of those superstitions. There are some towns, they don't kill python. There are some towns, they don't kill monkeys. They don't kill. So sometimes they find an animal or a tree or something, or sun or moon or stars to worship. They must find a totem or an emblem of their worship. For Nineveh, that emblem was fish. So when Jonah was pulled up and vomited by a fish, half of the assignment, half of his message has been preached. You need to go and read that story and read the exact words the people were saying when they repented. People who worshipped fish for generations now saw a man that fish gave birth to. Of course, when you are reading the Bible now, you're reading the Bible and they give you the backstory. He was on voyage, there was a distress, they threw him, a whale swallowed him, he was there for 3 days and he got swallowed. Now the villagers, that was not what they saw. They saw that a man was vomited by a fish. And so when that man began to say, repent, God is angry with you, it was easy for them to believe. The masses need relatable word picture. Let's keep going. Of course, when you address the pain points, so we're now discussing how to get the masses. Number one is to paint a personalized word picture. I won't dwell much on this. I will also not dwell much on the other because I will say some of these things in the summary. Address their pain points. You saw that Jesus, in Mark chapter 1, 23 to 28, then there was a man in their synagogue with their unclean spirits, and he cried out, saying, let us alone. What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. But Jesus rebuked him, saying, Be quiet and come out of him. And when the unclean spirit had convulsed him and cried out with a loud voice, he came out of him. Then they were all amazed, so that they questioned themselves, saying, What is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him. So Jesus was addressing pain points. Anytime he heals the sick, anytime he does something, so the masses must be able to see that differentiating stuff. And usually that's where the problem is. And this is where Babylon knows how to manipulate. They know how to manipulate the people's hunger. They know how to manipulate the people's pain points. Because the masses are always, they are emotive, they are not rational. So there must be a problem that you are attempting to solve at the collective level, may not be at the personal level, at the collective level. And there must be something that they see in you that will cause them to give you that following. For Jesus, it was the spectacular. But it was not just the spectacular. How do I know? You remember after he had multiplied loaves of fish and bread, guess what? The next day he had multiple people coming, multitude, the Bible says. And when they asked him, Jesus said, You didn't come here for the gospel. It's not what I'm saying that brought you here. You came here because of the fish and the food, free food. So you're talking about Indomie and bags of rice and noodles. You are seeing it happen also in the Bible times. So the masses, to manufacture or to get their following, sometimes you have to solve a pain point. And usually you see that those corrupt politicians we love to call corrupt have seen and mastered the art of solving these pain points. We taught this class in great detail. That's why we're skipping it. There's a class we taught, is it politics of philanthropy? So we went into deep dive, the politics of philanthropy. That was where we discussed it in great detail. So some of you here were in that class. So if you are not, you can just Google online on Boqer School, any of the Boqer School platforms, and search for the politics of philanthropy. And then you will get that class and see how it is important. But also how the other guys have learned how to abuse it. And that anytime they abuse it, the masses are unable to resist. Therefore, we also in that class discuss strategies to do it right. Because many times good governance advocates are not invested in their communities. They are not invested in the states. They are doing their private businesses quite all right. They are attending conferences quite all right. But they don't deliberately act in ways that will connect them with the masses. You only come back home 6 months to the election about work. Begin to organize programs. May not cost you an arm and a leg. Medical outreaches, school outreaches, partner with NGOs, secure funding from partners, do something, address their pains. Sometimes they only need you to speak up. They only need you to speak up. That the government is oppressing them, because I see some opposition leaders, the way they do the opposition is 1 year to the election. 3 years in, no comment. And of course, I've seen spectacular models, including some of us here, who are doing it right. Engaging from day one. Saying what the people want, because the people they see that the government is not working, but they need a stronger voice to say that thing that is in their hearts. But many times, opposition leaders, they go back after maybe they've lost elections. They go back, totally abandon the people, not interested, doesn't pick people's call, don't talk about the pain points of the people. And then 6 months to the election, you come back. No, that's not the way it works. If you can't give them tangibles, give them the intangible. Because they have physical needs, but they also have emotive needs. They need someone that will stand up to the government. They need someone that will tell, they already know that fuel is expensive, but they need someone they respect to say, the poor masses are suffering. That's the only thing they need. By you just saying, the poor masses, the poor is getting poorer, the rich, you have gotten their attention. Jesus will say, I was naked, you did not clothe me. I was in prison, you did not visit me. Sometimes the masses, although they are suffering, they just want few leading voices to identify with that suffering, and they will give you their support. But that identification must be loud, it must be clear, it must be consistent, and it must be ahead of when you will need them to show up for you at the ballot box. But you see, anybody that is chosen by God to lead, God is the one responsible. It's actually a partnership for announcing his chosen servant leaders. You will not see a king that God himself planned that he does not help to manufacture the consent of the masses. God is also in the business of manufacturing consent. I've told you guys in this class that the devil has no new strategy. None whatsoever. He's just borrows and perverts. Oh yeah, see this. And the Lord said to Joshua, who said to Joshua? The Lord. This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. So this Moses had just died. Joshua was appointed to his replacement, but the people are just looking at him funny. And God said to him, I will begin to exalt you in the sight of the masses, so that the masses may know that I am with you. If they don't know, they will not support you. And you need their support to continue leading. This happened in Joshua chapter 3. From Joshua chapter 3 to Joshua chapter 4, you will see what God did. He parted Jordan before them. Immediately, God parted Jordan before the people. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they feared him as they had feared Moses all the days of his life. So how does God cause the masses to pay attention to you? He will use you to solve a problem. But let's establish that point with another scripture. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his name became famous. You can't find an unpopular king that was instituted by God. You won't find one. The masses must be in support. So there are things God will do through you that will cause people to respect you. Let's read another one. As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him. And everything Samuel said proved, do you know that Samuel was not just a prophet? He was a political leader. Everything he said proved to be reliable. And what happened? So Samuel's own is to say what his God has said, and that thing will happen. Samuel will say again, and that thing will happen. Samuel will say, everything he said proved to be. There's another translation says that none of his words fell to the ground. In consequence, all Israel from Dan, the northest side of the north, to Beersheba, the southest part of the south. So it was like saying from north to south. They knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and give messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. Now, sometimes when the Lord can speak to Samuel without appearing. But many times, for him to get them to trust Samuel, he will bring the people and will appear to Samuel. And the people will see a cloud, a glory over the tabernacle. The same thing he did with Moses. He can speak with Moses without coming down. But there is something he wants to do in the minds of the masses. So he would tell Moses, go and meet me in the tabernacle. And as Moses enters, the presence of God will come down. So when the man finishes communing with God and comes out and says, let's go, everybody will go. Because the people are obstinate. They need to know that you have a competitive, they need to know that you know what you're doing. And the Lord is interested in not just because the Lord can speak to you quietly. But usually, if you're going to be a political leader, he will do something through you that will announce to others that he is with you. Now, this is the story of Saul. Saul was just anointed a leader, made the president of the country. But there are people strong-headed. They say, how can this man be our president? So they despised him and brought him no presents. But he held his peace. Guess what happened? God orchestrated the problem and asked him to solve it. If you read 1 Samuel chapter 10, 11, you will understand what happened here. So Saul has been anointed to be a king. But the people do not send him. Some people were even saying, how can this man be our leader? And God caused the Philistines and some people to do another thing again. And Saul mobilized the people and went and finished them. Bata, bata. When that thing happened, see the consequence. Then the people said to Samuel, who is he who said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we may put them to death. So I didn't want to read the whole scripture. So if you read from chapter 10 of 1 Samuel to chapter 11, you will see what happened. So this leader demonstrated leadership capacity by God. The same people who were saying he will not be a leader, they are now saying anybody who says Pim will kill. They are now they are even fanatic about him now. I told you the masses are fickle. In chapter 10, who is this man? By the time he fought only one battle and won, only one battle, just one. They are saying, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the man. So God is in the business of announcing his chosen servant leaders. The problem with the other side is that they want to announce themselves. Have you seen in all the places we read, there was a problem that they solved? All right. In Joshua chapter 3, the Lord says to Joshua, this day I will begin to. Why will God exalt a leader? Because he needs the people to willingly follow him. And so how will God do that? God will do that by demonstrating to the people that he is with you. Chicken. Once he demonstrates to the people that he is with you, that's all. They will follow you. Because the man they respected had just died. A young boy was just made the leader. Well, he was not that young. He became the leader at 80. He died at 120. So he was not that young. But compared to Moses, he was young. But why should they follow him? And God caused, it says, I will exalt you in their sight. The same strategy. If God anoints you, he will announce you. He anointed Samuel, announced Samuel, because he wants the masses to follow you. Now, the people who were asking, how can Saul be our leader? By the time God announced him, just one battle, then they said, who is he who says shall Saul reign over us? Bring the man. Of course, the man says, no, don't kill anybody. Of course. Because the opposite of God announcing you is you announcing yourself, which is now you know that the masses are fickle. Now you know that the masses are emotional. Now you know that the masses, that their consent is always manufactured. People now end up chasing clout. So they are not original. They don't want to solve any problem for the people, but they want to pretend to be solving problem. And many times the masses may not be able to distinguish between the original and the fake. But those of us here who want to be genuine leaders must do it right. In the case of Joshua, there was a need. They needed to advance, but there was an inhibitor. And God told him what to do, and he crossed the people on this other side of Jordan. His God parted the Jordan. A genuine, now some people will now go and fake it in today's Nigeria. There are two kinds of kings: the ones that announce themselves and the ones that God announced. And the thing with being a leader that God announced is that you will not even know when he will do that. Because he will tell you to, you will see a problem like a bear problem and you will kill the bear. You will see a lion problem and you will solve the lion problem. You will see a Goliath problem. It is in your nature and character to solve problems. So David was not targeting, for instance, you see cloud chasers on Instagram, dragging people, targeting people. Anything that is trending, they will choke their mouth there because what they want is the masses. How will you know that they're not genuine? When the cameras are turned off, they will abandon the people. I told you about a popular celebrity that when 200 Plateau indigenous were killed on Christmas Eve last year, he pulled out his singlet, took his camera, went there and started making video, pretending to be sympathetic. Immediately, people's attention moved away from Plateau. He dropped that thing, hasn't talked about it since then. They moved from trending issue to trending issue without any real commitment to solving people's problems. What they are after is the attention. So any issue that will grab audience attention is the one they are interested in. That's not David. Whether the lion is trending or not, David will kill his lion and continue his business. Whether bear is trending or not, David will kill the bear and continue with his father's business. He didn't even know that Goliath would trend. He was just doing what he is used to doing. And that day, God chose to exalt him. And the same problem he was solving, he solved it without even knowing that it was in the public. This is the same thing. Anytime Jesus heals the people, his fame went throughout it. Anytime he performs a miracle, his fame. Anytime he does something, his fame. If God in heaven will send you, he will say, "This is my servant, this is my son, in whom I am well pleased." There must be a problem that the society is having that he will solve through you to show them that you are competent, to show them that you're a leader they can follow. But you see, the other way around is that they are not interested in solving the community problem. They're not interested in solving the problem. They're interested in clouds. But you see, cloud chasers can start up in the steering wheel of the car. By the time they end up in the boot of the car. Because if you can't, because the crowd, the masses are good followers, but terrible leaders. I'll say it again, this time more slowly. The masses, they are good followers, but terrible leaders. Now you start out saying what they want to hear, saying what you want to say. And over time, you figure the kind of things they love to hear. If you keep saying it, very soon you will not even say what you want to say again. You only say what they want to hear. And you see this with your celebrity culture. That your celebrities, they don't believe in anything. In fact, today it has gotten so bad in some democracies that their front runners don't believe in anything. Their presidential candidates, they don't have any belief. Their belief is regulated by public sentiment. Whatever the public will support, that's what my policy is. That's what happens to cloud chasers. Genuine leaders have direction. Yes, will you take audience feedback? Yes, it's important. Will you be like Aaron? No. Because sometimes the masses can want to go back to Egypt. Sometimes the masses can want their golden calf. Because that's what they've seen all their lives. Did you know that Egyptians worship a cow god? So when they were enslaved for 430 years, they started all their lives, they saw people worshiping cows. So when they went into the wilderness, this God that Moses talks that they don't see. So they asked Aaron, make us a one that we can see. And they contributed their earrings to make the one, because the masses will only act according to their level of education, according to the level of their exposure. And many times you and I know that the masses are not that exposed, that many times they make decisions that hurt them because they are usually emotive. And so you can get feedback from the masses, but you cannot allow the masses to determine your public statements. You cannot allow the masses to determine your public policy proposals. You can ask them, what are the problems? How can I solve it for you? That's fine. But to get to the point where you no longer have a manifesto, or you have a very flexible manifesto that it says one thing in the morning, and then in the evening, the opinion poll has changed and said that more people support the other one, and you change all overnight. No. That's not, because that's cloud chasing, saying what the people want to hear so that you will retain their support. They always end up in the booth. See how Jesus, for instance, handled the crowd that came to him after he multiplied bread. We're not going to read it because this is the last place we're going to stop for today. You remember after he had multiplied bread in the wilderness, the next day they came, Master, we've been looking for you. Where did you go? We have been looking for you everywhere. We did not find you. And Jesus knew, oh God, you're not coming because of my gospel. You're coming because of the trader money. You're coming because of the trader money. You're coming because of the Indomie and wrapper we shared. And that same day, Jesus could have continued sharing wrapper, because now he now knows that wrapper sharing or sharing of bread or tweeting a certain way is what appeals to the masses. He could have continued in that trajectory, but see how he handled it. What did he do? He says, you will eat my flesh, you will drink my blood. All of the masses left him that day. Not one remained. And after, he asked his disciples, you guys are still here, you didn't join them. They say, Peter said, to whom shall we go? It's only you that has the word of life. A man that has found a formula for cracking the mass question. If he wants to continue chasing clouds, that's why your governors are chasing clouds. They know the real investments they can make for their communities, for their societies, but they want the quick wins. The ones that you do today, your name is on the billboard tomorrow. Your celebrities know the causes they can invest their energies in, and they will derive real good for the people. But they want the one that will get them 10,000 retweets. Believe me, Nigerian celebrities have force for good. But they usually use it in a way to manipulate the masses. Believe me, after this guy has stopped trending, this boat driver, all those guys you see interviewing him, they're no longer interested. They move to the next trending issue. I've told you here, how do you identify this kind of thing? Anybody you see jumping from, you follow them for 1 year. You can't find any problem of the society that they are solving. They are not interested in education. They are not interested in healthcare. They are not interested in social welfare. There is no thematic approach to their interventions. They are only intervening on topical issues. Believe me, they are charlatans and they are clout chasers. They have influence, but that influence is not for public good. If you give such people leadership opportunities, you will see it. Because a time will come, a governor has to make an unpopular decision. A leader has to make an although this is not popular, of course, you have to explain it, keep explaining it to the masses. Sometimes they may not even understand you until 10 years after you've left office, they will understand that what you did was right. A leader must be willing to make that sacrifice. But if you see clout chasers who can't even say what they believe to be true because they want social media following, is it acting in an executive manner that they will act in ways that will cut out at their popularity? Become like Jesus. Jesus preached the real gospel even after he has multiplied bread. He says, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. In fact, it is not just, he was saying a lot of things, but the one that got them, and he also claimed to be God in that same conversation. They couldn't stand him. How can you say you are God? Or how can you even allude to it? How can you even come and tell us we eat you? Are you now a carnivorous animal that will eat? He said a lot of things, and the end of his sermon, all of those people that were traveling from city to city looking for him, none of them remained. You must be willing to lose those followers in one day. Did Jesus get back those people? Today, statistics say that we have 2 billion Christians. He stayed on his message. How many people would he have gathered in that wilderness? The first time they said 4,000 men. The other time they said 5,000 men. Maybe these men are now told others. Maybe the day he preached that sermon, there were 7,000 men. Maybe plus children and women, give or take, under 20,000. If he wanted to keep that 20,000, he would have started the fish and wine business or fish and bread business. And I would have totally derailed from his core message. He preached his message. He lost the crowd. Did he get it eventually? He got everybody back. The ones who are supposed to stay with him, of course. There are certain times you have to tweet things that will make you lose followers. Say things that will make you lose followers. If you know it to be true and you are convinced, stay on that side. The masses will eventually turn around. So the class has ended. This is the time we will take the feedback. That the thing with political power is that you need the nobles. But don't build your presidency, don't build your aspiration on just the nobles. You will become a Tinubu. Few political hangers-on can like you, but the masses will resent you. And the best you can do is to send soldiers after them anytime they want to communicate their resentment. If you build only on the masses, you will be like Nnamdi Kanu. When they pick you, there is no strong voice that can speak for you. You have to have strong men. Men whose one letter can command the attention of the President of the United States. Men whose one phone call can become weighty. Jesus had such men in his ministry. A man that can walk into Pontius Pilate and say, give me the body of this Jesus you've crucified. Jesus did not just have the lame, the sick, the infirmed. He had strong men. Men who walked up to the king. As at the time this man was going, all those other people, they have vanished. Of course, you know now, The disciples were watching from afar. They couldn't even help him carry his cross. Peter has denied him. The other ones, they have gone into hiding because of their social status. But there was a man that had commensurate social status to walk into the palace of the king to demand for the body of Jesus they killed, just so that he can bury him properly. There are certain things the masses cannot do for you. You need them, but there are certain places their voices can't enter. There are certain weights they can't lift. But don't also build your presidency, don't build your governorship, don't build your political aspiration on one plan. The balance is that you have the strong men and you have the masses.